the milk light of moon, all that was lost is revealed. Our long bygone burdens, mere echoes of the spring. But where have we come, and where shall we end? If dreams can't come true, then why not pretend? How the gentle wind beckons through the leaves as autumn colors fall.
My girl, don't lie to me. Tell me, where did you sleep last night? Come on, tell me, baby. In the pond, where the sun don't ever shine. I was shivering all night too. My girl, where will you go? I'm going where the cold wind blows. Where's that, baby? In the pond, where the sun don't ever shine.
Carson was born here in Columbus in 1917. She was actually not born in this house.
Mm-hmm.
She was born in a house in our downtown area. Have you ever been to Columbus before?
Mm-hmm.
Well, if you have a few minutes before you head over to Andalusia,
Yeah.
you should drive through downtown because that's kind of her original stomping grounds.
Sure.
And you'll be able to see, if you've read most of the works, I think you'll see the setting for a lot of those works. But so she was born there. Her family moved to this house when she was about 9 years old, in 1926-ish. And this was kind of the suburbs then. Downtown was becoming more and more industrialized, so people were starting to move out. Of course, now this is our midtown district. It's not necessarily a suburb anymore. But so this was suburban life in a sense. And the house was built in 1920. They moved in 1926. It's a bungalow-style house, and some of the furniture is original to Carson's Nyack home.
Okay.
So she lived here from the time she was 9 until she was 17. And then, of course, she decided that she wanted to be a writer. So as she was encouraged by her friends and her parents to go to New York City. This is what she said. That's what she did. And ended up settling there permanently in the 40s with her mother as well. And they ended up in Nyack, New York. This portrait here was done by Emanuele Romano, an Italian painter. It's an earlier portrait of Carson. So as I said, some things are original to the Nyack house, but not original to this house.
Do you know when that was painted?
It was painted, the date is actually on there, 1949.
1949, wow.
Yeah, whereas this one was painted in 1964,
Right.
and you can kind of see
You can see the difference.
differences for sure. But on the mantle here, we have Carson's representative text. She's kind of better known as a novelist, but as you probably know, she also wrote some poetry, short stories, nonfiction essays, and a couple of plays as well. So she wrote in every genre, but she's best known for her novels. And The Heart is a Lonely Hunter. Have you read all of these, or?
I have not read Clock Without Hands or any of her poetry or plays, but I've read Reflections, Heart, Member of the Wedding, Out of the Sad Cafe. It's one of my favorites.
Yeah. So The Heart is a Lonely Hunter was published when she was just 23 years old, which is kind of a great feat, very young writer. And it established her as a successful writer, sort of critically. She followed that with Reflections in a Golden Eye, which was in 1941. Less popular.
Oh, yeah, I can see why.
Particularly here in Columbus, people felt a little bit perhaps threatened by this novel because it's controversial,
very much so.
With Columbus being so close to Fort Benning, it kind of seemed like perhaps that was a attack on the military community here as well. So people were pretty not as accepting of that book.
Yeah.
Member of the Wedding was published 5 years later in 1946, and of course Carson adapted it to a play which was successful on Broadway for many years. and Ballad of the Sad Cafe published in 51, I believe. So there's quite a gap after, because she's suffering, which I will tell you about later. And then Clock Without Hands, published in 61. It's her last published novel. And then the autobiography here on the end was published long after her death, I believe in 1999. And it was kind of Carlos Dews, who pulled it together, pulled archival material from the University of Texas, their archives, the Harry Ransom Center, to sort of bring together this autobiography that she was working on in the last years of her life. Have you read that by chance? It's
I haven't.
fascinating.
I'd like to read it.
It's pieced together, but it's really fascinating and quite thoughtful. There would be the actors here, and then these pocket doors would be their stage curtains.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so
That's really cool.
we like to sort of set things up like that too. When we have readings and recitals here, our performers are usually in this room, our audience is here, so we kind of like to keep it true to Carson's. And so in this room, there's just more biographical information. This is Carson's family tree. Her mother, Marguerite Waters, was a very vivacious woman. She was very supportive of Carson's endeavors. She kind of believed Carson to be a child prodigy, so she pushed her to study piano from the age of the very early age of 2 or 4 or something like that. And when Carson decided she wanted to become a writer, Marguerite was the one that supported her. Her father was a jeweler. He ended up owning a jewelry store in the downtown district. So that's why I think you see a lot of fathers who are jewelers or work in that profession in her work. And then she also had the 2 younger siblings, Lamar Smith Jr. and Rita, her sister Margarita, who they called Rita. And Rita was pretty successful in the literary world too. She was a longtime editor of Mademoiselle magazine, which at that time Mademoiselle was publishing Truman Capote and sort of these Flannery O'Connor upstart younger writers. So, and then of course Carson herself here was married and remarried to Reeves McCullers, who was a soldier at Fort Benning, who fought in World War II. They met, had a very passionate sort of connection. He was also a writer. They exchanged, books, and were married pretty quickly in this backyard for the first time. So when you leave, you should definitely walk around the backyard and see where they were married. It hasn't changed too much.
Wow.
But then they suffered, kind of from the competition that will grow between writers and also from money problems. Also, Carson tended to fall in love with other men, other women. Reeves, kind of the same, so there are a lot of love triangles. And so they divorced in 1942. And then when Reeves went to serve in World War II, this brought them closer together. They exchanged a series of letters, which are actually in that autobiography. It's a really interesting read. And then they were remarried after he got back from World War II. But that ended up being quite a tumultuous marriage. And they were able to travel around Europe together. They ended up purchasing a house outside of Paris. And so when they were there in 1953, things sort of culminated between them, and Reeves ended up committing suicide.
Yeah,
so,
I read about that.
Have you read the Carr biography by chance? Or that's probably the best biography. She gives a pretty good spiel. But some of the other things in this room, this is Carson's ice bucket, her liquor cabinet. She was quite a drinker, which you might have known. Some early pictures of her, some very early pictures of her here in Columbus as a child. Can you pick her out?
I don't know.
She's the one in gray. I just feel like she looks a little more...
Yes, serious?
Yeah, than the rest. And then in this case here, we have some books from Carson's library that we inherited from Nyack. So there are some that were given to Carson by Reeves. There are some special editions of her work. The Sweet as a Pickle and Clean as a Pig is her children's collection.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and then this copy of Out of Africa may or may not be, there were several copies in her collection. This one may or may not be the one she was reading when she died. She reread Out of Africa every year. So this is kind of representative of some of the things that would have been in her library and some of her knickknacks and things.
Oh, wow.
And then here we have the timeline, which gives you kind of an overview of some of these significant incidences and experiences in her life. As you probably know, Carson was very sick throughout her life. She suffered from rheumatic fever at a very young age, and they didn't diagnose it, so they weren't able to treat it. And she kind of suffered the consequences of that illness throughout her life. We think that this is probably what caused her strokes. So she had a stroke just the year after Heart is a Lonely Hunter was published, so very young at the age of 24. And then again in her early 30s, she suffered from another stroke, which was quite debilitating. She was paralyzed in her left side. She had to use a cane for most of her life. And on top of the drinking, the smoking, the mental distress from Reeves's suicide and then later her mother's death, she suffered even more and eventually died from an aneurysm in 1967. So kind of I think that she was probably in a lot of pain during her life, but you really wouldn't know it so much from the pictures.
Yeah.
She lived a full life. This is her with Reeves when they are in Italy, when they're traveling abroad. This is Carson with her sister. This picture interests a lot of people. This was in the Nyack home. Carson had the privilege of meeting Isaac Dennison, which was a big deal for her since Out of Africa is her favorite work. And when Isaac Dennison came to the United States, Carson said, well, is there anybody else that you would like to meet? And Isaac Dennison said, yes, Marilyn Monroe. So Carson was able to pull that together. So you have Marilyn Monroe and Arthur Miller in this picture too. And they all had a brunch together at Carson's house in Nyack.
Crazy.
Yeah, she had quite the influential set of friends when she was in New York. Here we have a panel that needs to be updated, but some pictures of Carson's home in Nyack, which when Carson's father died, he died in 1944. That was when her mother made the decision to sell this house, and she just said, I don't want to go back into that house, memories of her father and everything. And so Carson was able to, within a couple of years of that, purchase this home in Nyack, which is a beautiful home. It's got 5 apartments in it. Tennessee Williams advised her that a writer's income is never stable, but rental income is. So she split the home into 5 apartments and had artists living in the house, and often her mother, her sister, and she and Reeves lived in the house too. And it was when she was in Nyack later in her life that she met Dr. Mary Mercer, who this was after Reeves' death, recommended to her as a psychiatrist because Carson was suffering so much through depression and anxiety. And so Dr. Mercer actually became Carson's dear friend and her physician, and they pretty quickly ended the psychiatric treatment, but Dr. Mercer was very supportive. Carson kind of credited her with saving her life, essentially. And so the last 10 years of their lives, they were very close. And Dr. Mercer ended up with the Nyack home and many of Carson's things. And that is how we ended up with the Nyack house and many of Carson's things. Carson, when Dr. Mercer passed away, it's been almost 2 years now, I guess, a year and a half ago, 2 years. At the age of 101, she left everything to us. So this organ was a present from Carson to Dr. Mary Mercer. Carson couldn't play as much when she was, because of the strokes, but she still enjoyed listening to music. It's a pump organ. Also, this chair is perhaps the one piece that might be original to this house. It was Carson's mother's chair, and we haven't quite figured out if it was moved up to Nyack or if it was something that was purchased there, but it could perhaps be original to this home. This chair, also another of Carson's chairs. And then this sofa, actually, and this coffee table. This is where Carson wrote a majority of Clock Without Hands, her last book. So in the Nyack house, she would have been sitting on the sofa, had her typewriter on this coffee table, working on her last novel. And you are free to take a seat. It's just a quick 5-minute video. And to set it up for you, we think that this is about 1950. And Carson would have been traveling to Europe from New York City, so leaving by ship. And this man named Jack Mangan went to interview folks as they were leaving from New York City to travel, and he catches up with Carson. So he's asking her about the production of Member of the Wedding, because this is a time when it was on Broadway.
You'll remember her widely acclaimed play. As a matter of fact, it won many awards, A Member of the Wedding. And Mr. McCullers, was A Member of the Wedding your first major dramatic effort?
Yes, it was the first play I'd ever.
It had many novels that were pretty widely accepted.
Yes, I've written a number of novels.
Actually, A Member of the Wedding was written originally in book form, wasn't it?
Yes, it was a book, and I adapted it myself for the theater.
That probably was a job in itself all by itself.
It was lots of fun, as a matter of fact. I'd never worked with people before, and just the mechanics of getting together a production is something fascinating to me.
I should think that would be a bit of a change of pace. You find yourself in writing a novel, you're all alone, you have your own thoughts. Did Julie Harris strike you as the girl for the part the first time you saw her?
Oh, the very first, yes, and I wanted to ask her to read the play, and she wanted to ask me if she could do it. And we were both too timid. We were sitting on the back porch in Nyack. We were both too timid to say anything, so...
Actually, in A Member of the Wedding, it is a play, it is grassroots really, but while not delving too deeply into social problems, it has a very important message, doesn't it?
Well, I hadn't thought about it in terms of social problems, just, I always think more about it in terms of human beings, and it's just the basic theme is just the need to belong.
To belong to someone, to belong to a...
To belong to something, to feel oneself a part of life.
How about your present plans? Are you currently working on a new novel?
Well, yes, I'm always working on it.
I guess you have to find ways and means of getting away from static locations and scenes to get new ideas.
Well, I don't think about that in those terms, really. Because I think that the sources of creation are very mysterious, and I don't think one can find them by just looking for them. I think they have to come from within you.
By the way...
Don't you feel so?
Well, I'm not qualified as a novelist, but I would like to ask you whether in your writings your idea for a story comes first, your characters for the story. How does it develop?
Well, I would ask myself. I don't know.
You don't have any set pattern?
It would be so much easier if one knew what you know, just one thing suggests another and one doesn't know why.
Mr. McCullers, I want to thank you very, very much for chatting with us and giving us a little bit of the story of The Member of the Wedding. It's been a well-received novel, a very well-received play, and probably one that will be on the various stages throughout the country for many, many years to come. Thank you again for chatting with us.
And thank you very much.
Bye.
I also think it's interesting how she's dressed, which, you know, probably for New York City to be dressed in a man's suit coat and a button-up shirt was not a big deal. But for Columbus, Georgia at that time, you know, ladies were supposed to be very feminine. So it was, she kind of had her own sense of style. Probably to me, seems like the setting for Bernice and John Henry and Frankie. This is the table they're sitting around during the summer. We are talking more about Carson's sister Rita. As I said, she was kind of a significant figure in the literary world in New York, and she also, after Carson's death, edited the collection The Mortgage Heart, which has the poetry, a lot of the nonfiction, and Carson's short stories. So this is the sort of grand finale room. This would have been Carson's bedroom. So when she came home, she did, after she left for New York City, she frequently came home to sort of recover from her illnesses. She was very close with her mother, so she would often come home, and this would be the space where she would write and just sort of take solace in being at home. So there would have been a writing desk here and a piano there. And this picture was actually taken in this very room by someone in our local newspaper, the Ledger Enquirer. I believe when Carson was in her early, probably after the publication of Heart is a Lonely Hunter, so 23, 24. This is also where we keep her stuff. So most of these items belonged to Carson, and most of them come again from the Nyack house. Some stuff is just memorabilia. But we do also have these photos here of Carson with John Huston. As I told you, they became kind of close. So this is when she visited Ireland in the last year of her life. Some pictures are of Old Columbus. Mitchell's Candy Store, which used to be downtown, was probably the inspiration for the fruit and candy store that Antonopoulos works in The Heart is a Lonely Hunter. Let's see, what else? Carson's record player is over there. Her typewriter, her cane actually is right in there, stashed in there. And all these various knickknacks were things that she had collected. So the sort of famous piece in this room, I think, is probably the table. Because this is the very table where Carson hosted that luncheon with Marilyn Monroe. So you kind of want to tell people, put your hands on this table. Lots of famous people have put their hands on this, you know. And the silver set has an interesting urban legend behind it. Carson said that this was the silver set from Leo Tolstoy. She was a big fan of the Russian realist. She wrote an essay about this. And she was actually friends with Alexandra Tolstoy, who was Leo's youngest daughter. So maybe, I don't know, there's some truth in that. We haven't had any way to verify. Carson embellished a lot, so it could just be sort of a story. I'm trying to think. This is also a robe that Carson wore. And she talks about this, I think, in her autobiography, as sort of a 1,000-year-old Chinese robe. Again, perhaps embellishing, but and then some of her other items here: her travel trunks, her cigarette lighter, her stationery, some checks, things like that.
Please God, you're going to help.
But the largest buildings in the town were factories, which employed a large percent of the population. These cotton mills were flourishing, and most of the workers in the town were very poor. Often in the faces along the street, there was a desperate look of hunger and loneliness. The two mutes were not lonely at all.
Well,
I don't know, just
what
the
you
best
trying
place.
to find?
Anything. The truth.
True
Yes, sir.
about what the dirty South.
Look yonder. Look yonder. Look yonder. Where the sun done gone, the cabin can't hold 'em. Cabin can't hold 'em. Cabin can't hold 'em. No way I do. Yes, Ada got a gold mine. Ada got a gold mine. Ada got a gold mine way above her knee. Look yonder. Look yonder. Look yonder. Where the sun done gone, axe is walking. Axe is walking. Axe is walking all day long. Chips is talking. Chips is talking. Chips is talking, baby, all day long. Look yonder. Look yonder. Look yonder, where the sun done gone. Oh, Black Betty, Bamba lamb, oh, Black Betty, Bamba lamb, Black Betty had a baby, Bamba lamb, Black Betty had a baby, Bamba lamb, damn thing gone crazy, Bamba lamb, damn thing gone crazy, Bamba lamb, oh, Black Betty, Bamba lamb, oh, Black Betty, Bamba lamb, oh, big Black Betty, Bamba lamb, oh, Betty, Black Betty, Bamba lamb, Black Betty had a baby, Bamba lamb, Black Betty had a baby, Bamba lamb, damn thing gone crazy.
Her characters, strange and forbidding and bizarre, nevertheless are resonant with audiences all over the world, particularly because of her spiritual vision, but also because of her comedy. She was a wonderful comic writer.
Mary Flannery O'Connor was born in Savannah, Georgia in 1925. After a brief move to Atlanta, her family settled in Milledgeville. There, Flannery completed high school and took an undergraduate degree in sociology at Georgia State College for Women, now Georgia College and State University. Encouraged by faculty to pursue graduate school, she did so, studying journalism before taking a master's in creative writing at the University of Iowa. With a move to New York, Flannery joined the famous Yahoo artist column. Meeting some of the most influential writers and thinkers of the day, she formed a fortuitous friendship with poet and translator Robert Fitzgerald and his wife Sally. It was in their Connecticut home she continued work on her first novel.
Wise Blood came out in 1952, and it's very interesting, the local reaction. People could not believe that little Flannery O'Connor had written this novel about, which contained information about what's written on the walls of men's restrooms and had street preachers and violence and sensationalism, and there was quite a local stir. And I actually think nationally and internationally, when the novel was reviewed, people didn't really get it.
By the time Wise Blood was published, Flannery had returned to Milledgeville. Lupus, the disease that took her father's life, had forced her to crutches. A first-floor room on the farm willed her by an uncle provided a practical and ultimately welcome solution to the challenge of mobility.
Andalusia is the family farm, and this is where she spent the last 13 years of her life, most creative years of her life. If you read her letters, you see that she got a lot of inspiration from daily life on the farm. The peacocks, she had as many as 50 peacocks out here at one time, and they become, for her, it's an oversimplification to say Christ figures, but they become emblematic of God's mystery, which to her was, as a Catholic, was everywhere.
I don't know if you're aware that Flannery was also a visual artist. She did cartooning, but she also did painting.
Cartooning, I didn't know that.
She actually started cartooning long before she even began to pick up the pen to write. Wow. She had, I think, started in like first or second grade. She was in Catholic school. Apparently, the nuns took note of her cartooning. So by the time she reached college, she was the editor of the school newspaper, and she created a bunch of editorial cartoons, and they were all lino cuts.
That's very awesome. I'll have to look at those. Yeah.
Graph of it on this piece.
Hello.
The original piece.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
You can come in here if you like.
Oh, thank you. These are mighty warm heaters.
Yeah.
I like that. How are you doing?
Pretty good. How are you?
I'm great.
Enjoying your visit?
Oh, yes, ma'am. Very much so.
Yes, you got a pretty flower. Way back in my flower yard. Yes, I got a pretty flower. Way back in my flower yard. Now I got a fence built around it. Ooh, Lord, just keep on leading, man. Come and see me, Judy. Each and every day. I said, come by and see me, Judy, each and every day. You come by and see my pretty flower, well, you sure better stay away. You got the same kind of flowers that I got, but you do you want to bother mine?
I want to help you out a bit.
Have you 10 years and treat him just right? Lord, boy, he will be just as fine.
Water my flower every morning and evening before that sun goes down. Water my flower every morning, evening before the sun goes down. Let me tell you one thing, that I've got the sweetest flower in this town.
You can't tell me how to treat my pretty little flower. I mean, I got my own way.
Look out now.